After a rude interruption called World War II, America's hot rodders got back to their quest for speed with a passion. Under the guidance of Wally Parks and his newly formed National Hot Rod Association, car clubs sprung up all over the country. Organized drag racing came about as an activity for those clubs, the perfect alternative to the dry lake beds along the place to let her rip. First, it was abandoned airstrips, then facilities built especially for this burgeoning sport. The first national championship was held at Great Bend, Kansas in 1955. The drag racing explosion was on. Today, less than 30 years later, NHRA drag racing is truly major league sport. Over 600,000 people attend the 12-event Winston National Championship Tour. Untold millions more view at home on national television. In the next 90 minutes, we're going to thrill you, chill you, and maybe move you a bit emotionally. Hair-raising crashes, heart-stopping finishes, record performances, impossible dreams accomplished. It's all part of the Decade of Thrills from Diamond P Sports.
From 150 miles per hour to 250. From the flathead Fords of the 50s to the 3,000 horsepower supercharged engines of the 80s. Now that's progress. But drag racing is not just engines and technology. It's the people that have made this the great American motorsport. And who better to share this retrospective look at a decade of thrills than a man who has given us so many of them. Four-time funny car world champion, the first into the fives, the first to hit 250. My friend Don the Snake Prudhomme.
Hi, Steve.
Welcome. You know, we stand in your beautifully equipped shop. We look at this miracle of a race car, your new funny car for the season. Is it hard to remember what it was like barnstorming the country with an old top fuel dragster, an old station wagon, you and your wife trying to make a living?
You know, I was thinking back when you talked to me about this show, and brought back a lot of wonderful memories. And in those days, yes, I remember quite well. It was a lot of fun. It seems like it was just yesterday when it all happened.
Was there a particular moment in time when all of a sudden the fog lifted and you thought, this is more than just a sport. This could be a life's work. It's more than just a sport to me. It could be my livelihood.
Yes, there was for me. I was painting cars in my dad's shop, and I was drag racing on the side, and did a little street racing, but we're out at the drag strip and racing around, and I was painting cars during the week, and it came to where I was making a little bit of money in the sport. I couldn't believe it. You know, it was trophies, and all of a sudden there was a little money, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to have to paint these cars anymore. That's my new job in life.
But it's grown even beyond your wildest expectations.
Oh, it has, Steve. Yeah, the memories are tremendous out there. It's a lot of fun to do.
We're going to be reliving a lot of those memories today, Don, for you and drag racing fans everywhere. The most important ingredient in the decade of thrills, the ultimate drag racing experience, has got to be performance. And the major breakthroughs in the Top Fuel Eliminator category have come from one man, Gary Beck. In 1983, the Winston World Finals at Orange County International Raceway, Gary Beck improved on his own world record with a 5.39 second elapsed time. He was the first into the 560s, the 550s, the 540s, and here you see that historic 5.39. Everybody in the drag strip knew it was an incredible run, but not until the scoreboard read out did we really come to grips with a 5.39. But it shouldn't have been too big a surprise, because earlier in that 83 season here at Gainesville, Florida, Gary ran a 5.44, at that time the quickest ever. Jeb Allen was the first to feel the impact of Gary Beck's newfound performance when in 1981, Jeb came to the Winston World Finals, again at Orange County Raceway, with what appeared to be a lock in the World Championship. All he had to do was to win here in the first round, and he would go home with $40,000 in bonus money. Dwight Salisbury, trailing all in the far lane, drives around Jeb Allen. Allen apparently had problems and was out of competition here in the first round. And Don Prudhomme, that has to be a frustrating experience when all you had to do was go another couple hundred feet and win it all.
Yes, but Jeb lost his blower belt, and that, of course, quit turning the supercharger and lost all power of the engine, and that's it for Jeb for the day.
What does it feel like in the car, Don, when that blower belt comes off?
Well, it's completely out of your control. You're going along, you're making good power, you feel as though you're ahead of the guy, and in Jeb's case he was, and all of a sudden, boom, it's just out of horsepower, and the man drives around you, and you're just helpless.
Well, I was down at the far end of the racetrack, Don, but Jeb Allen had no interest in talking to me at this particular moment. $40,000 was within his grasp, and right now I would think, I hope he hasn't written any checks on that already, because there's a guy named Gary Beck that could just pick his pocket.
He's completely frustrated. He's worked all year for this moment. He's out first round. I feel sorry for him. This is a year's work for the man.
Jeb quickly became the most interested spectator in the racetrack, as here he watches Gary Back, the only driver who could take the World Championship away from him, defeat Shirley Muldowney. Jeb wishes right then that it had gone the other way. Gary Back, slowly but surely earning more points round by round. Now it's time for the finals. The mathematicians tell us Gary Beck must win this race, set top speed and low elapsed time of the event. He's up against the surprising Dwight Salisbury, who has hole shotted his way into this final round. Jeb Allen, his wife Cindy, looking on. The entire season has come down to the final race of the year and the last pair of cars. Gary Beck in the near lane. Dwight Salisbury always looking for the hole shot in the right-hand side. He's got 3 in a row here today. It is Gary Beck launching first. Gary Beck off first. Salisbury falls behind. Gary Beck across the finish line wins the race, but suddenly everybody's attention is shifted to Dwight Salisbury, Don Prudhomme. He apparently has blown an engine in a ball of fire.
Yes, he has. Dwight was putting it all out that day, running as hard as he possibly could, and he just didn't have enough to put out Beck. Beck was tremendous.
Well, Gary Beck gets low ET, but misses top speed by 2 miles an hour. The World Championship belongs to the Allen family as Jeb and Cindy celebrate. And certainly Gary Beck has a fine day at the racetrack. A new national record. Dwight Salisbury, who had to have felt some of the heat from that fire, even though the engine is behind him. Safety Safari right there to cool him down. Don Prudhomme, let's take another look, especially at Dwight Salisbury in that far lane.
Dwight's shaking the tires a little bit here, and he's falling behind, as you can see. As he's going down the course, the engine was all used up. He just didn't have any more. But the bad part here in an incident like this is that the fire wants to come forward on the car, as you'll see. It comes into the cockpit area because it's a still area on the machine. And then as the fire goes, the oil goes away and fuel goes away, it goes out. And it wasn't really that as dangerous as it looks for Dwight.
Well, fortunately for Dwight, he was on one of the longest racetracks in the country, Orange County Raceway. Even with the parachute burned off, Dwight Salisbury says, "I've had enough of this," and just grabs the brake, slides the car to a stop. But the 81 World Finals contributed even more to the decade of thrills. This is Funny Car Qualifying. Watch the near lane. Billy Meyer of Waco, Texas. Suddenly the engine explodes. He's on fire, and Don Prudhomme, it didn't look all that serious at first.
At first it isn't, but all of a sudden it just keeps building, pumping out more oil and fuel over the body. And these funny cars, as you know, they're enclosed, and they keep burning easy.
So Billy Meyer right now is concentrating on trying to get out of that car. The NHRA Safety Safari right on the scene, cooling off car and driver. Billy Meyer is okay. Billy taking some oxygen right now, but it appears to be in pretty good spirits. Billy, are you all right?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I just got a little warm.
Didn't appear to want to go out.
No, it didn't. I won, though.
Billy Meyer, you can see, in very good spirits, considering you can see his mustache is a bit singed. Billy, can you come back in competition?
I don't think so. Our other body's in Waco, so, I mean, it would be, too hard.
Well, were it not for the spare body still back in Texas, Billy Meyer might still be in the hunt here at the World Finals. Well, Billy Meyer was not the only victim of fire in funny car qualifying. Far lane, it is Gary Densham, one of the worst fires we have ever seen, Don Prudhomme.
Densham apparently blew some pistons out of the engine, and it's just pumping hot oil and fuel all over the engine, and of course it's in a tremendous fire. Escape hatch is opening up, and Gary Densham right now is just thinking about getting this thing stopped. That's the big thing in one of these cars is to get it stopped and get the hell out of it. And Gary's only true ally in this situation is the 5-layer protective suit that he wears, and it held up beautifully. Gary Densham, amazingly enough, got out of this unscathed.
The protective suit doing just an incredible job. 4 or 5 layers of the 5-layer suit have been burned off, but it still managed to protect Gary Densham. The boots charred very, very badly, as we can see right here, but they did their job, as Densham does not appear to have any burns anywhere on his body, but he gazes over at his race car and finds that it is not in particularly good condition.
Less than 10 years ago, Gary would have never walked away from a fire like this. But he's got his onboard fire extinguishers working. They're working on him, getting some coolant on him. And, of course, the fire crew's right on top of him, and they're going to start on him right now, getting that fire out and get it safe for Gary to get out of this car. And what a beautiful sight to see Gary Densham safely come out of that roof hatch. But the gods of fire were not yet done, Don. You were the next victim. It was my turn. There we go, same fire, same situation as Gary's. And, of course, my car got sideways there, and I wanted to get out of it as fast as I could, so I just put it over in the sand. climbing out of the car. I was plenty hot. I was just concerned about the heat in my fire suit and getting singed a little bit. So got the fire crew right on me.
It's amazing how quickly that NHRA Safety Safari reacts. No pun intended, Don, but I remember how cool you were afterwards. It blew late, right in the lights, or maybe even past him. The parachute went right away. Did you have any idea where you were before you came to a stop?
Not really, Steve. I knew I was still somewhere on the course because, obviously I hadn't hit anything up till that point. And that's the only thing I was concerned about. I know it looked terrifying and everything, and it was bad from where I was sitting, that's for sure. But the safety of these cars are tremendous, and that's I have to give a lot of credit to NHRA and the safety committee that make us run different parts and pieces of equipment on the car to make them safe like they are today. And to walk away from something like that is spectacular.
The snake and the mongoose. There's no greater rivalry in nature, and there has never been a greater rivalry on the drag strip as well. When they first started calling you the snake, you didn't like it.
I didn't like it at all. We're at a little drag strip in Long Beach called Lions Drag Strip, and it was around 1964 where it really took off with the name Snake.
And it came from your quick reflexes. But McEwen, always the opportunist, he seized on the moment and called himself the mongoose.
Yeah, McEwen did that. And I didn't quite take it as serious as McEwen did at the time. I was just more concerned about a good supercharger, and he was ready for some type of a gimmick to keep the fans interested. But it really made me interested too. I learned to enjoy the nickname of Snake.
Well, in the early 60s, Prudhomme was driving a car by the name of the Greer Black Prudhomme Dragster. They were practically unbeatable out there in a couple of years of racing. And I was driving a car for Ed Donovan Engineering. And we did pretty well, and we beat him a couple times where the other guys were having trouble. And Donovan was big on nicknames and things, rhymes. And he said, that's just like Kipling's Jungle Book, Rikki Tikki Tavi, the mongoose and the snake. He said, you guys ought to get that going.
Nicknames don't make horsepower, though, Steve.
Of the hundreds of times that you two went to the starting line together, one stands out, the final round of the U.S. Nationals.
Yes, that was quite a tense moment. McEwen was running fairly well, and we were running awfully good. And I really had the race in the bag, and just for some reason, that car struck the tires and put me out of the race, and I really followed him all the way down.
But to all of us who know you and Tom, we knew what a special moment that was, that final round, because Tom had lost his young son, Joy, a couple of weeks prior to leukemia. And I realized what a bond there was between you two guys at the far end, because you were the first person there. Mm-hmm. You beat me to congratulate to McEwen. Yeah,
it was quite a moment. As you well know, Steve, I hate losing a drag race, and especially to McEwen. But at that particular time, it just something that seemed like it just had to be for him to win that event and to beat me in the last round. And I had to congratulate him. It was a special moment.
For all of us.
Don Prudhomme, concerned about even the guy that beat him, his friend, Tom the Mongoose McEwen. The Snake hates to lose. A very competitive person. But if anybody had to win, he wanted it to be Tom McEwen. A very emotional moment down here. I have seen Don Prudhomme lose before, and it's usually a recluse. He gets in his truck, he leaves the racetrack immediately, talks to nobody. This is just a little bit different. Tom the Mongoose McEwen's son passed away last Sunday. He was a good friend to all of us, a young 14-year-old boy. Goose? Don Prudhomme. Very, very emotional at the moment. Just an incredible final, very difficult to describe. As many times as I've been here, I have seen few moments packed with as much emotion as this one.
The rivalry that I particularly like watching is Don Garlits, Shirley Muldowney.
Yeah, the fans come to their feet for that one. That's spectacular.
And some drivers, when they want to beat another car particularly bad, it throws their timing off, they make mistakes. Anytime Garlits and Shirley go to the starting line, they're not going to let you down. It's going to be a great race.
Oh, hey, how about that one in '82 at Gainesville, Florida?
Never forget it.
Incredible.
You might remember, Don, that Garlits had been keeping score on the side of his trailer for all to see, and he badly wanted to even it out at 4 apiece, but the lady had other thoughts.
When it comes to you and Garlits, head on head, there's more than money and a title at stake.
There's a lot of ego involved with both of us. I like to beat him because it's, for some reason, people think that it's prestigious to beat Big Daddy, and there are times when he's not running really good and he deserves to be beat.
Rate Don Garlits as a driver, starting line driver.
Off and on. I've seen him exceptionally good, and then I've seen him where I couldn't believe. I thought he, if I was really late. But, you know, we're all guilty of that one time or another, but I would call him marginal.
Well, they're certainly not shy about their feelings towards each other, Don.
Yeah, well, this is no love story here, I'll tell you, and it's going to be more than just a marginal start. When Big Daddy's up to run her, it's going to be tremendous.
If looks could kill. Bear in mind now, this was the first time these two had ever met in a national event final round. It was Garlits many years ago who had originally signed Shirley Muldowney's application for a driver's license, something he was bound to regret.
But these two have been battling all year. You know, they've been running on small racetracks all around the country. Now they're at the national event, Gainesville, Florida, the last round.
And Shirley Muldowney at this time was concentrating on trying to win a world championship.
It's more than a marginal start. Garlits is out first.
Garlits was away first, but Shirley Muldowney had the horsepower at the far end. She was willing to risk wounding that motor, and she did indeed, to defeat Big Daddy the first time she had a shot at him in a national event final. Boy, did this crew celebrate.
Yeah, it's great. Shirley's been doing a good job all year. You got to admit that, and putting away Big Daddy at Gainesville, Florida was the icing on the cake.
You could see Garlits move first there, Don.
Sure, the car's flexed up, picked up that left front wheel. Garlits felt as though, I'm sure, where he was sitting, he had the race handled, but Shirley's horsepower is just great that year. She's pulled right away from him.
Well, let's not forget Big Daddy's accomplishment that day. Just to make the final round was quite an achievement. It was all smiles in Shirley Muldowney's camp.
I'm going to ask a not-so-independent observer, John Muldowney, if this wasn't the most exciting final round your mom, your team has ever been in.
It was definitely the most exciting for us. We've wanted to put the old man away since '75, and we finally got our chance, and he will never forget it.
Will this maybe help bury some of that animosity?
Well, he's definitely afraid of this car more than any car there is, and we just like to beat him, but this was the time and the place.
Okay, it was one of the best final rounds I've ever witnessed, and I've been around a long time.
I have a feeling we'll see the two get together again in our next decade of thrills. Pro Stock Don Prudhomme has its own rivalry. Lee Shepherd, who has won the World Championship the last 3 years, and Bob Glidden, who had won it 5 consecutive years before that. We're looking at starting line shots of the two over the years in a variety of automobiles. And we look at the starting line, Don Prudhomme, because that seems to be where the excitement really is in Pro Stock.
Yeah, that's where it all really counts. These cars run so close, ET-wise, till the one-off start line usually has the race.
And the mechanics of staging, far more complicated than even a funny car, Don.
Yes, because you don't want to over-rev the engine, have too many RPM, so therefore you don't want to be sitting there in the staging lights.
Well, one of the most memorable starting line duels between these two had to be the 1983 U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis. Now, Shepherd moved right up, hoping to force Glidden to the line. Glidden took his time for a change. Now, they're both pre-staged. Neither wants to move first because they'd both like to come in second and have the RPM at just the right point. Is there truly an advantage to staging last, Don?
Well, there is, and especially in Pro Stock's case. They're just trying to throw the other one's rhythm off because reaction time, Steve, is really a critical situation here right now.
What a staging duel this was. They're both just sitting there pre-staged.
Yeah, Glidden is trying to force Shepherd's hand, and he did. Funny car racing, you can't do this. You just go up in a ball of smoke, you'd overheat the engine. Pro Stock case, they're okay.
So Glidden won the war on the starting line, but now the battle is down the quarter mile.
Yeah, it's head and head all the way.
But Bob Glidden in the far lane for Ford, and Indiana wins it, salvaging what otherwise was a marginal season. Lee Shepherd may have gone on to be the world champ, but Bob Glidden will long remember this win in front of the hometown fans at Indianapolis Raceway Park. The U.S. Nationals, the biggest drag race of them all, Bob Glidden was the Pro Stock champion.
Tremendous start. Both front ends are up. They left dead even. You know, these cars are difficult to drive. They may look a little easy, but some say they're even more difficult than funny cars.
Driver awfully busy in the cockpit, Don.
They sure are. They're shifting many times going down the course. They have a weight distribution that's completely different in our cars, and they're a little tough to handle.
Well, they were straight and strong on this particular day with Bob Glidden by half a fender.
I have never, ever at any drag race heard a crowd roar as they just did for you, Bob Glidden.
Great. Gosh damn it, Steve, we're so happy. I'll tell you this, when you come through this mess, you beat the Kunzes and the Iaconios and the Shepherds, we're proud, not just of this, but the family, Etta, and the kids. I've got a kid that's got a leg, he can't even walk on it, and he's been out here working all weekend. Damn it, we're just tickled to death.
Reaction times were identical, but what was going on? A little staging battle.
You know, these guys break their backs. So they nearly pass up their burnout to stage first, so hell with them. I'm going to let them stage first. I've got all the time in the world.
Well, you got a little revenge. Shepard has beaten you a couple of times here over the last 5 years. Congratulations again to you, Etta, and the kids, and all of Indiana.
Thank you.
Steve, I think that's what makes the sport as big as it is today, the kind of rivalries that we have out there between these drivers.
Don, the snake first struck in funny car competition, winning the world title, back in '75 with the trusty old Barracuda. But before anybody heard of a funny car, you were out campaigning Top Fuel dragsters. That was the king of the sport.
For about 10 years worth. Yeah, we were pounding the pavements, that's for sure, with Top Fuel dragsters. And in those days, you know, the engine was in front of you, just like this one right here.
Scary.
Yeah, I've kept this car. It's because it's been really good to me. We won the Indy Nationals Raceway Park 2 years in a row with this car, and it's just something I've always liked to go around.
Who could ever forget the last time you won it in the final round against Jim Nicole, one of the most emotional and spectacular moments that I can recall in this sport?
It was. The coming to the starting line was tremendous. Jim Nicole and I were battling through that whole event, you know, for about 5 days there, and just the two of us, the last two cars left to go down the drag strip, and he had it all hung out, and of course so did we. We released the clutch in those cars. They both left even, traveling down the quarter of a mile, and you know.
You could see him all the way.
See him all the way, and then all of a sudden, the lights went out, and it was a tremendous accident.
What a grotesque sight that must have been for you, Don, looking at that driverless race car, wondering where your friend and competitor was.
It was, you know, it was a long, hot summer, and that was the last round of Raceway Park.
Jim Nicole's clutch explodes right at the finish line. You won by only inches. What I don't believe we can see here is that the parachute takes Jim Nicole in the roll cage and deposits him in the soft Indiana grass, saving his life.
It sure did, and you know, of course, at the time where I'm sitting in the car, it looks like I would never see Jim Nicole again.
Well, what should have been a thrilling moment, winning the U.S. Nationals, had to be badly tarnished here looking at this.
Yeah, that spray gun was looking pretty good to me at that time. I was thinking about actually quitting the sport, as you know.
I think I'm quit. Oh my God, I seen that car go by me. I couldn't believe it. There was no back section on it or nothing.
I think you took that whole experience harder than Nicole did. He was at the banquet that night. I didn't see you.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was really my first experience with let's say death in the sport, where I was actually running someone, and I felt as though someone was killed in the accident, and it was hard to take.
Don, for me, it's hard to believe that men ever drove this configuration race car with this in front of your face.
It's hard for me to believe it too, but this is all we knew. You know, 10, 15 years ago, this was your slingshot, your Top Fuel dragster, and that's where you set. And you got a lot of oil on your goggles, and of course, a little fire every now and then.
Well, for every guy that's ever had a fire in a rear-engine Top Fuel dragster, another thank you note to Don Garlits couldn't hurt.
It wasn't for Don Garlits, I think, a lot. He really changed the sport, as you know. He's just done a tremendous job with that rear-engine dragster that just changed everything around and made the sport a lot safer.
The rear-engine dragster had been tried before, but no one approached the project quite like Don did.
I was on the starting line at Long Beach in the final run, and the transmission exploded, and it took off half of my right foot. Well, I lay in the hospital in Long Beach, California for 8 weeks, and I vowed that I would do something about this problem. So I put together on paper this rear-engine car that I thought would work. Got out of the hospital, I built the car, I debuted at the Winter Nationals. 71 at Pomona. Won the event, and it was the first rear-engine car to ever qualify at a national event, much less win one. So it's my proudest achievement in the sport.
Well, technically speaking, Don Perdomo, it should have worked long before. I mean, the car doesn't know where the engine is.
Well, the car really does know where the engine is, and Garlits was the only one to work that out, to get the steering right, and the rear-end ratio right, and the balance of the machine, and have enough nerve to drive it.
So the handwriting was on the wall for the demise of the front-motor dragster as Carl Olson loses to Don Garlits.
Don, in the last couple of years, we've seen some just horrific funny car fires, but the drivers, to a man, have walked away, and that continues to impress us.
It's largely responsible to the fire suits, the, of course, fire boots that you don't see in a funny car when the driver's sitting at the starting line. You know, his feet are protected too, but really most of all is the engine compartment, the way the engine is sealed off. you can have a pretty good fire, and by the time that car gets stopped, there isn't a whole lot of fire that's actually getting on the driver. It looks dangerous and it looks serious, but for the most part, the driver's pretty well protected sitting back in there. And of course, he's got his onboard fire extinguisher, which we didn't have 10 years ago. You can press that button and he's all filled up with fire repellent, and it really helps him.
Is there something that we need that we don't have now? A fireproof parachute, let's say.
Well, I'd like to think that those things will come, but right now the sport is safer than it's ever been. There's going to be new rules, new things that happens that'll even make it safer in years to come.
And between the National Hot Rod Association and the racing crews, there seems to be camaraderie. It's not management and labor. Everybody's working towards a quicker, safer race car.
That's right. And now when the sanctioning bodies put out a new rule on something, you don't hear the arguments anymore like you did from the old days about wanting to change something. And the new racer now is willing to take those new steps and to change things when they put it in the rule book.
In the beginning, a leather jacket and a battered old helmet was enough for a race car driver. No more. In the beginning, a pickup truck, a bag of grease sweep, and a fire extinguisher was enough trackside safety. No more. The new breed is well equipped and well trained.
Every time the funny car drivers suit up, so does a member of the NHRA Safety Safari in this special suit. Aluminized boots, a 3-layer suit, a sock for his head, a helmet to go on over that, and somehow the thought of a funny car fire is just a little less terrifying, knowing that Ronnie Wilson can go in and get the driver out.
And there was a moment at the 1978 U.S. Nationals when we thought we might need Ronnie Wilson in his chrome suit. In the far lane is Trip Shoemake from Phoenix, Arizona. A nice pass, but suddenly we have ignition, Don Prudhomme. Why would it come so late?
Well, he running out the last light. He was trying to get everything out of the car he could, and it was just a little bit too far and caught some pistons and caught fire.
The safety safari, the ambulances were ready to roll the instant they saw fire on that car. It is bouncing here.
Yeah, and what's scary in a situation like this, as you notice, it burns the chute right off the car. So therefore, the driver doesn't have any way to stop the car besides the rear brakes.
And it's trying to melt the tires, boil the brake fluid. Nothing's going right for Trip Shoemake on this one.
Yeah, he's trying to get into a slide right now to get it stopped. He wants out of that car.
And this is why anytime the funny cars start, so do all of the emergency trucks. They are poised and ready. The aluminum-suited man in the back wasn't needed in this particular instance, and Trip Shoemake got out of the car to race another day. It's just amazing, Don Prudhomme, how safe these cars are under the worst possible conditions. And this is Raymond Beadle in 1982 at Gainesville, Florida. He's given us a lot of thrills with 3 world championship titles, but on this day it was a thrill of another kind.
Beadle's really tough. He's the guy that put me away, that took away the world championship from me and went on to win 3 consecutive world championships.
This particular race, he's up against Al Segrini. It was in round 1, Gainesville, Florida. Watch the blue car, the famed Blue Max. Suddenly it turns right. Beadle may be overcorrected. He's on his top.
Ooh, that's in trouble right there. But driver that he is, and as good as he is, he kept his cool, got the car back under control, and he's just as safe as can be right now.
Now, I've never believed that people came to a racetrack to see somebody get hurt, and that proves it right there. Look at the ovation for Raymond Beadle as he crawls out of that race car. And, you know, I've seen this 100 times, but I can't wait to see it again. One of the most incredible incidents in drag racing history, and certainly worthy of being in our decade of thrills. Beadle waves him off. I'm all right. It's okay.
Yeah, he just gathering his thoughts together right now, trying to figure out what the heck happened. I think it caught him as much a surprise as it did the fans.
And if I know Raymond Beadle, right now he's taking a mental inventory of what parts he has in Dallas, Texas, and how soon he'll be back on the track. Snake, what happened here?
It just got away from him. I think he got into a little bit of tire hop, and the car got sideways. They're running the front end light on the car, and it just got the air underneath it, just like a Grand National car will do. It spun upside down and connected with the guardrail.
Boy, the roll cage took a good shot right there and held up.
Sure can, but these cars are quite strong. They're like a Grand National car. If you get too much air underneath them, get that front end too high, you're gonna get upside down.
The amazing thing, watch this, is as soon as all 4 wheels are back on the ground, and maybe before Beadle is back driving the car.
Probably a little lady luck was with him right now, I'd have to say. He could have went the other way and went over the rail, but fortunately everything caught him just right there and actually put him right back over on his side of the track where he started out.
And Don, I think they continued to race this car while they were building a new one.
They sure did. They went back to Texas and put on a new body.
Well, I was on the scene immediately after Beadle got out of the car, and I think that maybe I was more excited than the guy in the crash.
Yeah, I'm okay.
hurt my feelings worse than anything else.
What happened? We couldn't tell from where I was.
Well, the car went out and it shook a little bit, and it had like a slow drift, and I thought I could bring it around, and it just dug in on the one side, and when it did, it just flipped it. There's nothing I could do.
Well, that's the first time you've been on your head in a long time, maybe ever.
Well, we went on our head once several years ago, but I got to say it was my fault. I stayed with it a little longer. You know, we was trying so hard to win that round. We've slid around before and had no problem, but like I said, it just dug in.
And the car doesn't look that badly damaged?
No, it's all right. I think it rolled once or so.
Okay, I'll let you join your wife, Holly, because she's obviously concerned as your condition. He's fine.
She's worse than I am.
Raymond Beadle, sometimes I think he has ice water for blood, a cool, calm individual.
Well, Beadle's incident at the Gator Nationals was tame in comparison to Tim Gross, 1980 Spring Nationals, Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, that's what you call getting away from you.
The worst thing that can happen is to get onto the knife edge of that guardrail, then the fuel tank explodes. Everyone holds their breath until they see Tim Gross unbuckle and run away from this one.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, Steve, that you can walk away from something like that?
Well, I said it then, and I'll say it now. That was the most spectacular non-injury crash I have ever seen. An absolute wonder that Tim, he didn't walk away, he ran away, literally. And there's nothing left of this one. This one's not going to race again.
The car just seemed to get away from him, and he hit the guardrail with a tremendous amount of impact.
Well, it appears that it took the steering wheel right off the shaft, Don. It's just dangling there as the emergency crews pick up what's left of a $60,000 funny car.
And as you notice, the roll cage is intact.
And a lot of people said, well, that's it for Tim Gross's drag racing career. Well, he had news for him. A month later, he showed up at Montreal, a car he built with his own two hands because he didn't have enough money to buy one, and qualified on the pole. Don, what went wrong?
Steve, now you understand how fast those cars accelerate and the tremendous speed they're going there. He lost the car. The car got away from him, and he hung with it a little bit too long, and now the throttle's stuck with all the tremendous damage on the first blow.
It is charging under power across the racetrack. Hits this rail harder than the first one.
It's one of the worst accidents I've ever seen.
Look at the shot here the roll cage takes. Oh, to survive that.
But Steve, the rear tires, those big Goodyear tires, are taking a lot of the cushion in the roll of the car.
You know, I had a chance after the incident to look at Tim Gross's fire suit. And remember, it's 5 layers thick. The guardrail just above the knee had cut through all 5 layers on both legs and didn't even break the skin.
And we're only talking, he hadn't even run an eighth of a mile down the course yet, and look at the damage that occurred.
Don, I was just on the other side of that fence with our Diamond P cameras, and I would tell you, from the time the parts quit falling till Tim got out, you could have heard a pin drop. 50,000 people held their breath for this moment, and then they let him hear it.
Well, Tim, amazingly enough, other than a ripped fire suit and a little spot on your finger, you looked hale and hearty.
I feel fine. A little bit sore, but a little disappointed more than anything, I would suppose.
Well, I've seldom seen a driver. I've never seen a driver take that kind of a pounding in a funny car and come out as well as you have.
Well, I don't know if that deserves an award or not, but I would say that I could see that I was definitely in trouble. The throttle was stuck. I attempted to lift up the throttle, and when it came around, I knew I was going to hit the guardrail. So I just tucked myself in as best as I could and tried to ride it out.
And when you saw the fire, obviously, to get out.
Well, right, the immediate thought, yeah. I really had no idea it was really that bad. In fact, to tell you the truth, I don't think I even felt the second impact. I was probably momentarily knocked out.
Well, just that you're standing here talking to me says a lot about the rules and the car builders.
Definitely for the safety, yeah, because really the whole back half of the car stayed completely intact. Those rear tires are definitely a cushion, added security there. So, you know, as it rolled over and it was on the rail, with the way the rules are set up, of course, I was completely covered.
Well, Don, we're so fortunate that our decade of thrills has been accompanied by a decade of dedication to safety. Men like Tim Gross and Raymond Beadle, and yourself even, testament to that.
That's for sure. To see someone walk away from a crash like that just adds a lot to the sport.
Well, no single individual has added more to the sport over the last decade than this famous lady, Shirley Muldowney.
I go into a race to win. That's the name of the game. I've got people that depend on a week's pay, and if I don't do my job on that starting line, we're just not going to make any money. That's why we're here. The money is good, and we want to take it home.
As I'm sure you remember, Don, her first taste of the big bucks was in June of 1976 at the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio. Big Connie Coletta, at that time acting as crew chief.
Connie did a great job for her. He organized the team. He got the financial backing that she needed, and he's quite a tuner himself, you know. And of course, Shirley as a driver, there's no one any better at her on the starting line.
Her competition in this, the final round, the Edwards Brothers Racing Team from the Eastern Seaboard. Bear in mind, Shirley Muldowney had never won a national event at this time. She can no longer see Bob Edwards. She knows in her heart that she's done it. And they say, Don, that the first big win is the toughest.
It is, but it's the sweetest. Get by that first big national event is something.
Last year at Indy, we did real good, but I was late. I was late a few times on the light, and I don't know what it was, but Ronnie Cap said something to me about a month ago, and he says, Shirley, remember always one thing, drive your own race. And I said that to myself 100 times today, drive your own race.
Little did we know what was to come from this battling young woman, Shirley Muldowney. Hugging her mother, May Rourke. You can see Connie Collette in the background. Ronnie Cap, also a very important member of that crew back in '76. In '77, Shirley Muldowney again struck at the Spring Nationals. This was to be the year of her first World Championship, and this was the key race. An Englishman, Clive Skilton, who raced for just 1 year in this country, is in the near lane, and Don, it looked like he had her covered.
Yeah, Clyde came over here from England and was doing a great job. But as you see, Shirley just nosed him out there.
Well, Clive decided to go race stock cars because there weren't any ladies to beat you there. Shirley Muldowney moved on in that same year of '77 to Englishtown, New Jersey, Don, the Summer Nationals.
Shirley staged here, and Jeb's having trouble with his car, and he's not going to make it. They're going to put the red light on him. He's out. Shirley's on for a single.
So Jeb Allen, who started his career at the age of 18 a few years back, sees Shirley Muldowney go on to win the Summer Nationals and a lot of points towards a world title.
Jeb Allen's really frustrated here. There's just nothing he can do. Apparently they had some type of an engine, probably a 5-cent part, who knows.
But as we saw earlier in our Decade of Thrills, 4 years hence, he would earn the ultimate title in drag racing. Shirley Muldowney, by winning the Summer Nationals, might have earned enough points to clinch one for herself.
Shirley Muldowney, our Summer Nationals Top Fuel champion. Your pre-race confidence was well deserved.
I don't know what to say, Steve. You know, we worked awfully hard. Jeb was really hard. You know, I was worried about him. Patty Dakin was really tough to get by. I mean, he was right there. What can I say? You know, we all did our jobs right today. Just the track made it a little hard on us.
And you extended your points lead towards the World Championship. Would that be something, your lifelong dream?
That's it. You know, we have a very comfortable lead now. You know, we used up a lot of races. We had hard luck at the Winter Nationals, but we have a comfortable lead now, and I think my dream is going to come true.
Well, here comes Connie, your crew chief, and your son, John, and all the boys, and I'm sure you want to hug them, and they want to congratulate you.
Ronnie Tolbert.
Again, congratulations.
Yes, the dream did come true, but not officially until October of 1977, the Winston World Finals at Ontario Motor Speedway in Southern California. The golden statue was hers.
Shirley, a realization of a dream, how many years old?
20 years.
20 years.
Long time, Steve.
You didn't think you were going to do it earlier in the year, did you? It started tough at Pomona.
That was where it all happened, at Pomona, being the #1 qualifier. We thought we had it in our back pocket until a dollar part failed us, and it didn't really start the program for us.
1978 and 79 were good years for Shirley Muldowney, to be sure, but she was unable to amass enough points to win her second world title. That brings us to the old Ontario Motor Speedway for the World Finals, October 1980. After a year-long battle, Shirley Muldowney was in the second spot, chasing Gary Beck.
Shirley, you said you're a good leader, and you've proven that, certainly. How have you polished that talent? How have you honed that talent?
Pay attention. Not be looking around, watching the other car. And it's reaction, and I think women do have really good reflexes, and it's just something that you get used to.
And Don, we were all on the fence to watch her second round race with Connie Collette.
Yeah, this just isn't any race for Shirley. Racing Collette is a big thing. And as you see, the woman was right. She's out first and pulling away.
The first time the two had met since Collette had resigned, shall we say, as the crew chief on Shirley's team. So you can bet he had all the horsepower he could muster, maybe too much.
You know, and this is quite a feather in Ron Tobler's hat, beating the ex-crew chief on Shirley Muldowney's car, and now he's the #1 crew man, and pulling away from Collette must have been a thrill on his behalf, too.
Well, this race and this moment at the far end of the racetrack turned out to be important ingredients in the film that was made of Shirley Muldowney's life 3 years after this, the critically acclaimed Heart Like a Wheel. Well, Shirley had no idea at this point that movies would be made of her story. All she was concerned about, get the blue car out of competition.
Beck had been running pretty good up till then, Steve, but something seemed to be wrong. He seemed to be losing a little bit, and he wasn't easy with himself. And there you are, he went up in smoke. Applied too much power. Maybe he was trying a little bit too hard to beat the lady.
Or maybe trying to replace horsepower with clutch. Who knows? But Gary Beck is out of competition. The underdog, Gary Cornwall, has put him away. Shirley gets the news, but she also knows what she and her crew have got to do. They must beat Gary Cornwall in the very next round, the semifinals, to get enough points to take her second world championship. Is she the picture of confidence on the tailgate of that truck? The lady is ready.
But just like you saw in Beck's race there, smoking the tires and Cornwall winning. Cornwall seems to be on a roll, so Shirley still has to put him out. It's going to be a tough race for her.
Well, someone told me you didn't take the heads off, and even if you don't hurt it, at a national event, you take the heads off if you're smart. So I hope that'll bite him. I hope the right lane will get to him, and I think I'm going to leave on him, so I don't know. It's like you said, it really is the most important race in my career.
So the lane nearest our cameras, or right lane as Shirley Muldowney referred to it, Don, was a big factor in the outcome of this race all day long.
Sure, and she earned the right to be in that lane. She outran Cornwall's elapsed time the run before. She's running quicker than Cornwall. She selected that far lane, and believe me, that was the best lane of the day.
So Shirley Muldowney, at least on paper, has a bit of an advantage, as Gary and Penny Beck know, who were at the far end of the racetrack with me, Don. They had brought a bottle of champagne down there to celebrate with if Gary Cornwall could beat Shirley Muldowney here.
Yeah, but I'm afraid they might have to give that champagne to Shirley, because she's running awfully good right now.
So Shirley Muldowney, within her grasp, an unprecedented second Top Fuel World title. No one had ever won it more than once. Cornwall, he took his time, hoping to maybe put a little too much heat in Shirley Muldowney's engine. Shirley, I've never seen an athlete in motorsports that rises to the occasion like this woman does. She thrives on pressure, and there was plenty of it.
She's really, she's probably one of the best under pressure. She's quick, she's calm, cool, collected. She's got her act together, I'll tell you.
They sat on the starting line for what seemed like an eternity, and then it was Shirley Muldowney straight and strong down the left lane, and as anticipated by some, Gary Cornwall smokes the tires. Shirley Muldowney is the 1980 Top Fuel World Champion, and while her crew celebrates, it's utter despair for Gary and Penny Beck. And you know what, Don? He did indeed give her that iced bottle of champagne.
Gary Beck's a class guy. You know, he's been working all year for this moment, and to hand over that champagne bottle must have been hard on him. But you know, something told me that Beck was going to be back for more.
Oh, absolutely. There were a couple of other very important races in Shirley Muldowney's decade of thrills. This one at the Spring Nationals in 1982, the first time in any final round, believe it or not, 2 women drivers. Shirley Muldowney against a young upstart, as Shirley called her, from California, Lucille Lee. Lucille in the near lane. Of course, the pink car in the right-hand lane. Lucille's motor starts to go away. Shirley.
And she won. You know, Steve, I think there was more pressure on her there racing another woman than it was one of the guys.
What a year 82 was. The final round, the U.S. Nationals, Indianapolis, Shirley Muldowney versus Connie Coletta. It doesn't get any better than this.
No, it doesn't. Coletta was struggling all day, just put a fresh engine in his car, though, and he's in top form right now for this last round. He wants her.
Coletta had to borrow a cylinder block from funny car racer Kenny Bernstein. They are off the mark together. What a drag race.
Coletta was leading coming out, but Shirley once again is pulling away.
Shirley Muldowney, Connie Coletta certainly didn't give up easily. The crew celebrates the quickest side-by-side drag race in history. Shirley Muldowney wins her first ever U.S. Nationals.
Orange County World Finals. All she has to do is get by Dwight Salisbury on this round, and believe me, it is tense for her.
Yep. Well, after winning the U.S. Nationals, she had so many points done, she only needed 1 win light. This is first round against Salisbury. He's a good lever. He was out first. Remember, it was Dwight who blew up in that spectacular final with Gary back in '81. It is Shirley Muldowney. That's all she needed to win her 3rd world title. Unleash the balloons. No one does her job better than Shirley Muldowney.
Yes, I have a job to do and have to put everything else out of my mind, and I want to try to do the best job I can because it takes like 100% from everybody.
You know, Don Prudhomme, the top performers, Shirley Muldowney, Gary Beck, Raymond Beadle, yourself, you don't start with a Top Fuel dragster or a funny car. You start in the sportsman ranks of drag racing, getting your feet wet in this kind of competition.
Yeah, you really get the feel for going up and down that quarter mile. It's a car just like I started out with right there. It gets you a good feeling for the sport and how to lead the starting line.
And an awful lot of racers are really consumed by sportsman racing. They have no desire to advance into the more expensive, more exotic top fuel dragsters, pro stocks, or funny cars. They like the kind of equipment they campaign. But for others, such as Ken Vini, it has been a true stepping stone. Vini never has had a big sponsor, ever the innovator.
Ken, you come in here with a brand new car. You built the body yourself, I understand, the chassis yourself, a motor full of borrowed parts, and here you are.
Got lucky.
I don't think so.
I've raced before. I had a pretty good idea how I wanted to do it again, and had a good idea where to start. You know, because I had done them before.
You said you just simply couldn't afford to buy the components, so you had to build them.
Well, right. I mean, I didn't have the money to go racing again, and I really like to race, and I like to race funny cars, and the dragster is a little easier to run. It's easier to race against a dragster, but the dragster, the funny car being more popular, you can match race it and make a little money with it that way too.
Well, that was 1978 when Ken Vini was in the alcohol ranks. He then moved up in 1982 to a nitro funny car. That can be a very big step for a guy who says he's undercapitalized and has to build all his own parts.
You've built so much of your own stuff. What on this car have you manufactured?
Well, I make the heads and rocker arm assemblies and valve covers, manifolds. Let's see, I didn't build a blower on this one, but you could. I'd have.
Your motto is, if you can't afford it, build it, huh?
That's what I've had to do so far. I think you try a little harder when you don't have very much money. Maybe that's what it's all about.
Yeah, he sure caught our attention at the Nationals. He ran that 574, 254 miles an hour. We kept saying to ourselves, who is this guy?
Well, let me see. He tied your all-time ET record and took the speed record away from Billy Meyer.
Yeah, with homemade parts on his car to boot.
Well, you just couldn't get rid of Ken Vini on that day. And here's a youngster you may never get rid of in this sport. Trip Shoemake, Phoenix, Arizona. Talk about pay your dues through a long list of sportsman cars and an even longer list of, shall we say, marginal pro cars. He finally got a first-class ride with Johnny Loper, the little Haas car from Phoenix. This is the Southern Nationals in '81. Trip had quite a day.
Yeah, Trip's one of those so-called little guys, but on this particular run, on this particular event, he was right on and leading Paul Smith all the way down the quarter of a mile, and there he goes putting out a little smoke. Now, that's a little dangerous. You can get a fire doing that, too.
Well, you know, it's fun to see you down here for a change in a favorites role.
Oh, man, I tell you, it's been a long time coming. I'm tired now. Well, it's good to be here. That's
You're in 6:10, but it sounds like you cooked it to do it.
Well, we did. We ran that 598 last night, and we cooked at 10, but I'd rather go home with burned up pieces and go home a loser, you know. Got plenty of tin soldiers where those came from, let me tell you.
That's a dedicated racer, and also a dedicated family man. An important part of Trip Shoemake's racing is his wife, Susie. They've been going to the drag races together since their high school days, even long before they were married. And there's another little Shoemake that you'll always find at the racetrack anytime Trip Shoemake is driving a funny car.
Who do you think's going to win this drag race?
Daddy.
Daddy is? Does Daddy let you do anything on the car? Do you get to help? What do you do?
I help him pack the parachute.
Help pack the parachute. That's an important job. Well, I think Heather's motto is best put right here, Dave. It says, I love racing. You do, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, good luck to you and your daddy.
If I'm bad, he spanks me.
Is she something?
Boy, she indeed is something, huh, Snake?
She's a cute kid, I'll tell you that. I've seen her around the pits plenty.
All right, this is the second round back at that '81 Southern Nationals. Trip Shoemake this time up against Sherrill Greer. Talk about go back a ways. He was a world champion even before you were.
That's right. Sherrill, I won the championship before, but this day was Trip Shoemake, Johnny Lopers. They just had it all together.
Boy, you bet they did. And that put them into the final round for the first time ever. But, boy, they don't have an easy one here. Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser king in the near lane.
Kenny Bernstein's plenty tough, but Trip Shoemake, I'm sure they really have it loaded up, and they left good. He's on a good run here. I've been worried about a fire out of his car, though, but he got to the finish line first and in safe.
And that was a brand-new engine they cooked, but right now, Susie Shoemake could care less. That is one happy lady, family, and team from Arizona. Kenny Bernstein was the #2 qualifier, had top speed of the event, but just couldn't catch Trip Shoemake, who was a little stunned by it all.
I've seen you more excited after a first round win. I don't think you've totally accepted this yet.
I'm burnt out. Now he changed motors and everything. Got to run Bernstein. He's a bad Jose, boy, I tell you. I'm just glad to be here.
Well, you ran good too, like 6:07?
Is that what I ran? Yeah. I didn't know that. They couldn't have me the time card. I went by the lights too quick.
Well, it was 1/100 of a second between you, so you must have left good.
Is that right? Yeah. That's good.
And here is daughter Heather and his beautiful wife Susie. Hi, Heather.
Let's get old Loper.
She said earlier today, she says, my daddy kisses me a lot.
Where's that old man Loper? He's a tough one.
Johnny Loper, the car owner from Phoenix, Arizona, who has backed this young man for so many years. And as I said before, they always had the parts and the ability and the desire, but it just never came their way. Congratulations to all of you. Wonderful moment down here as Trip Shoemake wins his first ever national event, the Southern Nationals.
But for me, Don Prudhomme, there is no greater rags to riches story than Frank Hawley.
Yeah, Hawley jumped on the scene a few years back. Didn't really know much about him before he got into the Chi-Town Hustler car, though.
In the far lane is the last car that Hawley ran in the sportsman ranks, a little alcohol funny car, before applying literally through the mail to car owner Austin Coyle. He says, I'm a good driver and I'll race cheap. Austin said, come on, young man. You're just what I've been looking for. And boy, did he turn out to be good. It all started right here in 1982 at the Gator Nationals. After qualifying low at Pomona and being beaten early, Hawley now in the final round against Tim Gross.
We all knew Hawley was pretty good, but we just didn't know if he could handle it through the last segments of the races. And there he goes on for the win, and for sure he handled it just fine.
Coming out of the legendary Chi-Town Hustler of Farcona's Coyle and Minnick, loved all over the country for its long, powerful burnouts, has now proven to be championship caliber as well. For Frank Hawley, his first ever national title. For the car owners, well, they were in a final once before many years ago, but for them, their first NHRA Oscar as well. Tim Gross comes over, who worked so very, very hard to get his car ready. Tim may have even had a little bit of an edge back at the line, but the powerful Chi-Town did it. Something else, boy.
Thank you very much. It feels pretty good. Those guys all look pretty happy.
Yeah, I'll bet they are. A little bit of shock here. Can you believe this has happened to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you drive a car like this, it's bound to happen, right? I'm real happy for Tim, too. I mean, he works real hard. Glad to race him. I wish, of course, you know, we could have advantaged our deal at Pomona. I wish Raymond had been around this long, but we'll get him down the road.
Well, the money went to where it was needed the most in this particular final.
Boy, I'll tell you, and it's about time.
Okay, a happy Frank Hawley, as you can see. Our congratulations to Austin Coyle and Pat Minnick and all the gang from Chicago, Illinois, the Chi-Town Hustler.
And bear in mind, they needed that money from their Gator Nationals win to get them to Columbus, Ohio, where again, Frank Hawley, the Chi-Town Hustler, in the final round, this time against Al Segrini.
And this really showed that Frank Hawley knew what he was doing at the steering wheel. The leaves really good on the lights and cars handling just fine. It was really an easy victory, real consistent.
Well, you hit on the key word, Snake, consistency. Consistent driving in 5:90 elapsed times brought the Chi-Town to the Winston World Finals in California, leading the points. But Hawley was defeated early. The only driver with a chance to take the World Championship away from him in the far lane, Billy Meyer. But first, Billy Meyer has to get around Kenny Bernstein here in the semifinals.
And don't think Myers isn't capable of doing that. Myers is a real consistent driver and excellent mechanic on the machine. Of course, he's backing up here right now collecting his thoughts, and so is Bernstein. Bernstein needs this victory also. This would be a big one for him.
Were you ever in this position, Don, where you had the lead, the end of the season, and you had to stand by with your fingers crossed?
Many times, yes. I've waited down at the end of the track just to see the outcome of the next round would determine a championship or not for me.
Well, there's Frank Hawley doing that very same thing, down there pacing around, mopping his brow. He has got to be Kenny Bernstein's biggest fan right now.
But back at the starting line, the only thing that matters right now is that one of these two drivers to win the race. They're not thinking about any championships, really. They're trying to beat one another to the end of the finish line.
So Billy Meyer and Kenny Bernstein, Frank Hawley nervously pacing at the far end. They are right together. What a race, Don.
What a race. That is a close race. That's one of the closest races you'll ever see.
And Kenny Bernstein defeats Billy Meyer. Frank Hawley, the 1982 Funny Car World Champ.
Austin Coyle, his Lady Barbara, Frank Hawley and the crew. A 5-year-old race car. They never felt they had the funds. Frank Hawley, the crew of the Chi-Town car, going over to congratulate Kenny Bernstein. 2 weeks ago, at the Golden Gate Nationals, it was Bernstein that defeated Frank Hawley with a hole shot. He wasn't congratulating him then. A wonderful moment for the Chi-Town crew. How has becoming world champion changed your life?
Oh, a lot of people want to talk to me now. They want to hang out with me. Before they didn't. So I like that. It's inspired us to run for the rest of the year. I mean, we've realized that we can do it now. It was something that everyone always thought couldn't happen by an underdog team, and we proved it can happen. I think it's helped a lot of other people, too, just with their attitudes, you know.
And he repeated in 1983.
In this sport, drag racing, where you have no second chances, luck is a bigger factor than in some other forms of motorsports.
You know, we're dealing with under 6 seconds now, so lady luck plays a big part of it. If, regardless how much money you have, how well you're backed, and the crews, how great a crew you have, and nice as outfit as you have, if lady luck isn't on your side, you're for sure a loser.
And over this past decade of thrills, Gary Beck maybe had the longest siege of that bad luck of anybody I can remember.
And he's overcome it. You know, we begin to wonder for a while, but it just goes to show in this sport, if you try hard enough and love it enough, you'll overcome it.
Well, in the constant quest to go quicker, you try and experiment using different engine, clutch, tire, gear ratio ideas, and in the meantime, while you're planning on going faster than 5.6, you forget how to go 5.6. So you got to kind of start all over. You got to go back to school again, and you got to teach yourself how to race again and cut back. It's the trouble we've had in the last few months is I can't put it on one thing. It's been numerous things, but it appears that it's slowly working its way back out.
People always ask, why doesn't he just go back to the same combination that, say, won this race in 74, ran 5 seconds, 2:47? Why don't you?
Well, it's awful hard to do that. From 74 to now, the tires are completely different. The tracks are better. We have concrete starting line this time. This is my third car from there. This car has better traction built into it. So we have to automatically build more horsepower. That's not that easy to do.
Gary, all of your many fans, especially, of course, the Canadians, myself for that matter, after this race, we want to read somewhere, Beck is back. Is there a good chance of that?
Well, certainly, the SCAR's always been a team effort, and everybody tries real hard, our sponsors, the crew people, so you keep working on it. You don't get discouraged. You keep plugging at the weak spots, and sooner or later it wins. We won a race a few weeks ago. We won a few rounds. Now we're planning on coming back, that's for sure.
Right after that conversation in 1977, Gary Beck went to the starting line at the Spring Nationals for a qualifying attempt. A good launch, the car straight and strong to the middle of the racetrack, but he was still snake bit.
Did a tremendous job of driving. The car looked like it wanted to get away from you.
Well, it was all right. It was shaking a little bit, but it was going to be okay. You know, it was carried the wheels. It left extremely hard in the gate, and I could feel the engine just miss a beat just as the lights was coming, and kaboom! It was a pretty loud explosion.
Just going to finish your weekend, you know?
No, we got one more bullet down in there. We'll bring her out.
Sacrifice another lamb.
Yeah.
Count on it. Gary Beck never gives up. The 1978 Cajun Nationals. It's Beck in the near lane against Mike Tarter, a car he should easily handle. As they stage, Beck's engine sounds terrific. It looks like this could be Gary Beck's day after all of these hardships. Is Lady Luck along for the ride? Not a chance.
No, Steve. He just lost another engine. Beck's luck just hasn't changed. He's still in that slump. It's a shame to see a world champion, former world champion, go through something like this. He seems to be working it out, but boy, that had to have been, tore up the engine real bad. He lost the rods out of the engine, apparently, Steve, and he had a bad explosion.
Gary Beck? Gary, you okay?
Oh, yeah.
One of the longest lasting top fuel fires I've seen in a long time. What happened?
Well, it appears it pitched a rod out there in low gear, and I lifted the throttle, and the engine just stayed up at RPM for some reason, and I had the fuel shut off, but it must have got running on some oil and just detonated, and it had a lot of RPM, just kept throwing the oil out. So give all them safety crew guys something to do.
When did you first realize you had a fire?
Well, when I hit my head on the dash, the engine almost quit, but no power. I mean, I didn't realize any fire, but it just certainly knew something was amiss, that's for sure.
So you felt no heat at all and didn't know you had a fire when you got out?
No, certainly with a rear engine dragster, you know, your fire's back there, and you don't realize what's going on, you know, as far as fire or oil or transmissions breaking. You don't know until you get down here and get out.
In 1981, Gary Beck's fortunes improved a bit. In fact, he finished runner-up to Jeb Allen in the World Championship chase. But by spring of '82, some of the old gremlins were back. Here he faces off with a lady driver from California, a rookie, Lucille Lee. The car not performing that well. This, if there's such a thing as an easy one in drag racing, should have been it for Gary Beck. But watch what happens. Gary Beck is in the far lane. Lucille Lee in the near lane. She smokes a tire. She's all but beat. Suddenly, Gary Beck's parachute comes out for no explainable reason. It is Lucille Lee across the finish line first.
Well, the story of Gary Beck's defeat by the tire-smoking Lucille Lee is right here, an empty parachute pack at half track. Gary?
Yeah, Steve, it's certainly disappointing for us, you know, to lose that way, but it was, you know, an unusual run for me. Everybody's been asking why, how come, what happened, you know. And
why, how come, what happened?
And I've been telling them, you know, that I don't know. But I might buy myself a little time here, but I know exactly what happened. I pulled the parachute at half track. I went for my manual high speed and I missed the lever, and I hit the parachute lever.
Unintentional.
Unintentional, and it hit, and I wasn't sure. Oh, it confused me because I thought I'd hit the high speed, and the chute hit, and the engine pulled down, and I thought the engine nosed over like it was burning up. And before I realized that I had actually hit the parachute lever, then she had come up on me, and it was too late to regroup, because I think I probably could have beat her pulling the parachute to the finish line if I'd have known what was going on.
Would have been so easy for Gary to say, yeah, the parachute shook out. It happens all the time, but he's not built that way, is he, Don Prudhomme?
No, he's not. That's what makes Beck what he is today, a champion, and I don't think I would have admitted something like that. I'm not sure.
Well, here's the upbeat side of the story. 1983, the U.S. Nationals, Gary Beck near lane, Joe Amato on the far side. Beck won the U.S. Nationals in 72, 73, and 10 years later in 1983, it is Gary Beck, and that gives him enough points to virtually clinch the World Championship. For a change, his wife, Penny Beck, and the Blue Blouse, and coroner Larry Minor have something to celebrate. A lot of these fans lived through the trials and tribulations of Gary Beck. Now they celebrate victory with him. Gary Beck, world champion. You know, Snake, it just wouldn't be drag racing if it weren't for some minor annoyances now and again. Ask Connie Coletta. The only injury in all of that was to Shirley's foot. You know, Don Prudhomme, on the surface, drag racing is such a simple sport. You just go from A to B in a straight line. What could be easier?
Not so easy, Steve. You're sitting there with 2,500 horsepower under your foot. And when that light changes, believe me, it's a ride in itself.
I believe I know the fellow in that yellow car.
Yes, and unfortunately, I tagged the guardrail there. The car went into a shake, and next thing I knew, I was up next to the guardrail. My wife, Lynn, was a little upset, as you can see.
Well, considering, Don, that it was the U.S. Nationals, the most important drag race anywhere on this planet, and that you wrinkled up your brand new Pepsi Challenger, you got out okay and were in a better mood than I expected when I finally caught up with you in the pit area after this incident.
It's been a long time since you've made contact with anything like that.
Yeah, it has, but you know, when you're at the Indy Nationals here and you're running all out and trying to beat guys like Beal and Bernstein and so on, I mean, you got to step on it, and, you know, this is for keeps.
Your wife, Lynn, seemed concerned. She thought maybe you ought to be checked. You feeling all right?
I'm just fine. She's hit me harder than this.
that lane wasn't what I thought it was.
Had you considered maybe taking the left-hand lane instead of the right?
Yeah, I was going to.
What made your decision?
Me, I'm the one that decides.
I feel responsible as a driver for not keeping it straight, mainly because I feel bad for Mark.
Well, if I had it to do over again, I'd coast through and take the safe way, but you give it your best shot, see what happens, and sometimes it doesn't work.
Don, Raymond Beadle in the blue car told me after this what looks like a chicken incident with Billy Meyer, all he could think of was, Lord, don't change the rules on me now. When you waltz over that center line, you lose. It's always been that way, and it always will be. But anytime you're gunning for ultimate performance, Don, strange things can happen. Is there any lengths to which a drag racer won't go to go quicker, faster?
Absolutely not. That's what it's all about. Wings, horsepower, bigger tires, whatever it takes for elapsed time and speed.
We've seen twin-engine cars. We've seen engines set in the cars side by side, behind the driver, in front of the driver. We've seen Indianapolis-style engines, turbines, just an incredible potpourri of power plants over the years. And this was a car that you drove at one time, the 4-engine Pontiac Dragster of TV Tommy Ivo.
Yeah, those are Buick engines in there, Steve. And yeah, I took the first maiden voyage down the quarter mile with that car.
That's when you were young and fearless, right?
That's right, Steve. It's been a while back.
And 25 years later, you're all out there still going for it. In 1984, March to be exact, this man, Joe Amato, went for it. The fastest speed in the history of drag racing. The first to top 260 miles an hour, Joe Amato. He did it. His name will live forever in the NHRA record books.
That's right, Steve. He stunned the drag racing world with that 260. It was an incredible mark, but we all knew it was coming. We just didn't know when.
Joe, his wife Jerry, and crew celebrating that landmark speed. Nobody can take history away from you. Let's look back through our decade of thrills at some particular performances that were records of their time. The 1976 Gator Nationals. In the far lane, Larry Lombardo, one of the finest drivers ever to sit behind a Pro Stock steering wheel, took Bill Grumpy Jenkins' Chevy Monza to an unheard of 8.71 elapsed time. Shirley Muldowney in 1976 also at the World Finals proved that she could run with the very best. Shirley's 2,500 horsepower nitro-burning supercharged engine coupled with her good driving put a 5.7 second elapsed time on the scoreboard, the second quickest in history.
How about this one, Steve? 78 Summer Nationals. Gary Beck, Don Gartlitz, side by side, getting ready for the quickest side-by-side race in the history of the sport.
I don't care what trouble Gartlitz may have been having on any given day. If he races either Gary Beck or Shirley Muldowney, anything can happen. He's always up to that particular challenge. Back in the far lane, the famous Thrush car. Big Daddy in the tower lane, affectionately known as the Old Man. And look at him, Snake.
You got it, 586. Gary Beck took the win, and Big Daddy's was a 591.
Gary Beck was so happy to have beaten Gartlitz.
It felt great. Low elapsed time of the meet, 586.
Terrific. I didn't see him anywhere, and I thought I heard him down the lights. I knew it was close. But I'm plenty pleased to beat him, I'll tell you that. He beat me last weekend. He's a tough customer, and I'm enjoying this every second.
1979 was one of the glory years for five-time world champion Bob Glidden. His Pro Stock car here in the near lane at the Gator Nationals, always a very quick racetrack. This is the Plymouth Arrow automobile that he only campaigned one season, but in '79 it set the elapsed time record at 8.48 seconds. Had a lot of people shaking their heads.
How about this one? 79 Summer Nationals. Raymond Beadle, Dale Poldy. Nobody could touch Beadle. He was running strong. His car was performing well, and he's staging up here against Poldy.
Well, this was one of the years, one of three, that Raymond won the World Championship. But Dale Poldy was a bit of a surprise in this race, right alongside Raymond Beadle. In fact, Beadle gets there first, but the two of them together performed the quickest side-by-side race in funny car history up till 1979.
Yeah, Dale Poldy gave it everything he had. He was right with him. neck and neck, and Beetle just stretched it out a little bit through the mid-course here and nepped him at the end. And, of course, Beetle lost his engine. You can see the smoke coming out of it about right now.
Well, Don, Gordie Bonin will never forget the 1979 U.S. Nationals. His performance that weekend earned him a nickname that still sticks today. He was up against Tom Hoover in this particular race. Bonin will be in the near lane, at that time racing out of British Columbia, Canada. Now, he had already run 245 miles an hour. He needs to back it up within 1%. He does at 244, and they still call him 240 Gordie. All right, here's your famous Army car, Don. This was the Gator Nationals in '80.
Love that car. It couldn't do anything wrong at that event. That's when you can spend a nice weekend. It was really comfortable. Car was flying, running in the fives every run. I enjoyed it.
Well, on this particular run, you reset your own national record.
That's right. It jumped right up to a 594.
And I was there with you right after that run.
This deal's getting plenty serious, isn't it?
You got a lot bigger smile this round than you did the last one.
Yeah, it's coming around. You know, we just got to run so damn hard to make it perform, but got to do whatever it takes, you know.
Well, apparently you did, Don, because you came back an hour and a half later and reset that record.
Yeah, we wanted to run as hard as we could and stretch it out. Run a little quicker this time. Mustered up a 593.
You still have that car?
Sure do. I wouldn't let it go for anything. I have it in my collection.
Okay. Well, here, a year later, same racetrack, Gainesville, Florida. A change of color, a change of sponsor, but the performance was still there in the near lane.
Yes, it was. We like it down there in Gainesville. The car performs well there. The air was cool. And here we won a 592 and set a new record at 247 miles an hour.
But unfortunately, Snake, that record didn't last very long because we moved along to the '81 U.S. Nationals in the blue car. Your nemesis, Raymond Beetle, in the far lane. He was red hot on this day.
Boy, you just couldn't touch Beetle. He's strong. He took the championship. Couldn't do anything wrong. He put out the performance, did what it took to win.
Both ends of the records, 249, 592.
It was a good run. I knew it was really good. Car left hard that time, and it moved hard through the middle, so and it run good on the top end. Didn't lay over, and we didn't hurt it, so we knew we made a good run.
Another man who made a very good run, an unexpected one, was Dale Armstrong at the '81 World Finals. His last event in his racing career, Armstrong, a new record. He takes it away from Beetle with a 589. Don Prudhomme, you again.
I like that car, too. That was our brand new Trans Am, aerodynamically sound. We were looking to run 250 miles an hour. Felt as though this car would do it, Steve.
Well, it certainly did. Don Prudhomme, you became the first to ever break 250 in a funny car at that Cajun Nationals event.
What a good feeling.
Yeah, I had that ever-loving feeling today about it. The car, I ran 43 yesterday, and we were the first ones to run 240. It's nice to be the first one to run 250, regardless what Beetle does.
And you just took the #1 spot from Beetle with still one section to go.
Decent, yeah, I'm real happy about that. But Raymond's no slouch. We're going to have a tough race.
No one breaks down the performance barriers, though, like Gary Beck. The 1982 U.S. Nationals. At this time, no one but Beck had ever run in the 550s, and now he just astonishes the field with a 5.48 elapsed time, a new record by a country mile for Gary Beck.
Well, Gary Beck arrives down here to an ovation from the officials in this area. The quickest elapsed time in the history of drag racing, 5:48.
Great. It was pretty strong, really.
Well, we talked earlier today. You said you were going to go out there. You're not even going to try to run 50s. You lied.
Well, we know the thing is, car's been real strong the last 3 weeks, and I'm real glad for Larry Minor to have a great running car like this.
What a shot this one was, Steve. It set me back in the seat, and I knew I was on one.
A 563, the mark stands today.
Coming into the U.S. Nationals, people were talking about maybe a potential of a 570 with a funny car, but a 563, they had to check 5 different clocks to make sure it was right.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. You know, it's hard. If I was back home and I heard this was going on here, I wouldn't believe it, but I'm driving the car, and I'm here to tell you the car's doing it. It's an incredible racetrack. It always has been here, and you know, it ran a 73 and come back with a 63.
Shirley Muldowney surprised everyone, possibly including herself at the 1983 Gator Nationals. While really working on her elapsed time, trying to whittle it down, Shirley came up with a whopping speed. Just a byproduct, I would think, of those efforts, Don Prudhomme. 257 miles an hour for the pink car and the lady.
Wow, a lot of years we waited for this one. They were happy. Shook a little bit, and it's a clean motor.
Don, you notice how one face keeps reoccurring along with your own, of course? Here in Top Fuel, it's Gary Beck.
Yeah, this is another one of those thrillers. You got Beck and Thorpe. Let me tell you, Thorpe's not easy to get by when Beck's on it. But Beck's on a roll.
This is the 1983 Gator Nationals, and the times are really special here. The quickest side-by-side race ever, Beck at 5:49, Richard Thorpe at a 5:63.
This is turning out to be a heck of an afternoon for the Larry Minor Gary Beck team. That is the new national record, 5:49.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, we're real happy. I'll tell you, the cars are running just great. Larry's doing a terrific job of driving, and we tried a few things at Pomona, you know, with some experiments, and we went back and we just made them exactly the same as best we could, and they're running just fine.
How about this one, Steve? 83 U.S. Nationals. We've got Mark Oswald in the Candies and Hughes car against Kenny Bernstein.
Well, Kenny Bernstein enjoyed the most successful weekend ever for a funny car racer, but Mark Oswald in that multi-hued blue car had his moment in the spotlight too, Don.
He sure did. The reaction times here is going to play an important part in this race. Bernstein's off first. Bernstein all the way. But look at that speed.
257 miles an hour on a losing effort, the fastest ever. But wait a minute. Kenny Bernstein came back and took the mark officially at 256 miles an hour. Remember I said earlier you have to back up these records within 1%. So Kenny Bernstein needs 1% of 256 or closer. And on this particular run, he defeats Raymond Beadle in the Blue Max and runs 254 miles an hour. Right it in National Dragster. The record holder, Kenny Bernstein at 256. I think, Don, of all the performances over the last couple of years, it surprised me the most, it was this one. Who is Rocky Epperly, and what is he doing here setting records at the 83 World Finals? A team, a car, new on the scene, owned by an air racer of all things, but it's Rocky Epperly who takes away Shirley Muldowney's record at 257 miles an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the fastest drag racer of all time, Rocky Epperly. Another 257, young man.
Can't believe it. Thing's got some power.
1975, Don, through 1978, the other funny car racers were really racing for second place. Especially 76, you won, what, 7 out of 8 races. Can you reveal to us now the secret?
It was really a matter of the fuel system in those days. Instead of just buying it off the shelf like everybody else did, we worked hard at it, did a lot of fuel work, flow work, and put us ahead of the pack.
You used to say to me, they're going to catch up. I'm surprised it's taking them so long.
Yeah, I was very surprised at it, and now we're working on a new system to get us back there again.
Well, now Gary Beck and Top Fuel has them scratching their heads, as you once did. Again, fuel system?
Again, fuel system. Yeah, it's an important part of the sport. Beck was the first one to come up with this two-stage system and put him way ahead of the field. But now they're catching up with him, too. But once again, he's the first one that started, so he's going to hold on to that edge for a while.
And Gary is never satisfied with the status quo. He even has a new onboard computer he hopes will help him keep that edge.
Computers have been around drag racing for several years now, monitoring various engine functions. But the new computer on Gary Beck's car will give them a totally different kind of database, thanks in a large degree to this trailing fifth wheel that stays on the asphalt at all times. This, coupled with a sensor at the front of the motor on the crankshaft and a sensor on the drive shaft where it comes out of the transmission, is going to give them some answers to questions that were previously unanswerable. For an example, you know the engine RPM, you know the shaft speed. That tells you the slippage in the clutch. You know the shaft speed, the gear in the rear end, and now you have ground speed thanks to this fifth wheel. That will tell you the tire slippage at any point down the racetrack. And the way this fifth wheel is mounted, its angularity tells you the tire growth, something we have always wondered about. We know they grow, but have never known how much. The very, very interesting information. And in a sample printout here, we can see that every 16th of a second, it prints out engine RPM, the mile per hour, the distance traveled, the acceleration in G-forces, the position of the throttle, even the engine RPM, and a lot more things can be added.
Well, while Gary Beck was developing his fuel system, Don, and working with his computer, this man, Joe Amato, had a different approach.
Yeah, Joe decided to stick the wing up in the nice, fresh, clean air. They raised the wing on the car and really caught everybody by surprise. It was really a simple but most logical thing to do.
And boy, did it get our attention. The first time down the racetrack, it went 259 with the new wing.
Joe Amato's latest speed secret is really not very difficult to find. It's the most radical, tallest wing yet installed on a Top Fuel dragster. Why is it so high? Well, Joe says it's to get it into clean air, that if it's down in the conventional location, there's an awful lot of turbulence from the engine, from the exhaust headers, and there's not clean air as you'll find up here. Also, by laying the wing back at such a radical angle, if you remember your high school physics, it works as a lever. So you're not just using the airflow to push down, you're also levering more weight for traction onto the rear axle. And also by getting it to clean air and with this lever effect, you can run a much smaller wing. In fact, this wing is really a duplicate of the 1984 Indianapolis 500 wings, very aeronautically designed. In fact, Joe says you could flip it upside down, it would work almost as well. This is Indianapolis technology coming to drag racing.
Well, the chatter in the pits and in the stands for 4 days. Will Amato run 260? Will he be the first? And the answer was yes. Against Gary Ormsby in this semifinal round, Don, he pulled it off.
Sure did. This was a shot that was heard around the world, believe me. We were all in a state of shock when that first 260 mile an hour came up on the board.
Well, he's got a good long racetrack on which to do it. Joe Amato probably was going 270 by the time he shut it off, but that was history. That really was the first 260 mile an hour run by any wheel-driven race car. The wing got instant results.
You know, it's nice to say I can go 260, but you can't let that get you because we have to, win the race and try and tune the car for track conditions. So we've been just kind of sneaking up on it. And he made a little fine tune that time, and he said, if we're going to do it, this is going to be the run. And apparently he knew what he was talking about because there it was.
Apparently he did, Joe. Joe Amato went on to win the Gator Nationals that day, running even faster at 262 miles an hour. And Don, then the talk started. When will a funny car run 260? And this man, Kenny Bernstein, given the best chance at the time, thanks to wind tunnel testing recently performed in the Ford Lockheed wind tunnel in Marietta, Georgia.
It sure did, and that caught all of us by surprise. We didn't know that Bernstein was down in a wind tunnel and learning the things he was with a funny car. It was long needed in the sport to put one of our cars, our fast machines with a fiberglass body, in a wind tunnel, and fortunately for Kenny, Ford Motor Company gave him the provisions to do that.
And the results were instantaneous. The wind tunnel told the Budweiser King crew to put that lip around the front of the spoiler there, Don, to clean up the air, to streamline the fender wells, to close off the side windows, completely encase that car in plexiglass. No open windows whatsoever on the machine. John Collins was in the opposite lane, and little did he know at this time that he was going to be on the losing end of history, because the wind tunnel developed Ford Tempo body on Kenny Bernstein's Budweiser King. Well, let's watch and see it unfold. In the middle of the racetrack, the car is awesome.
It's very impressive. The car stuck well, and what was equally impressive is that there was no smoke out of the car. The car was clean and dry, which is an impressive run.
260 miles an hour. Kenny Bernstein did it just 1 hour after Joe Amato and Top Fuel.
260, it sounds like science fiction.
It's getting that way, isn't it? I'm telling you, I don't know where it's going to stop. It's just going to get better.
Let's hope the winning doesn't stop for the Budweiser King and Kenny Bernstein. Here comes a crew that is second to none right now in funny car racing. Still cannot believe what they saw on the scoreboard. 260 miles an hour.
Don, with all of the tremendous performance we've seen, Gary Beck's 530s, your own 560s with a funny car, Joe Amato, Kenny Bernstein breaking that magic 260 mile an hour barrier. But it seems, even though you try to do everything right, that sometimes the best equipment money can buy is stretched to the breaking point.
That was a bad one, Steve. That even scared me a lot. I feared for the man's life.
This is Mike Dunn, qualifying for the 83 World Finals at Orange County Raceway. Straight, strong, no sign of any problem. Then suddenly, the car from this angle literally vaporizes.
And Roland Leong runs a safe operation. He runs the engine always safe in the car, but things can happen even to Roland.
In this case, the crankshaft broke in 2 pieces and with such force that it just shattered the body into 1,000 pieces. Had the parachute not deployed here accidentally, Don, he would have been in bigger trouble.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. The parachute played an important part. It helped slow the car down a little bit. As you can see, it's dragging behind the car. But once again, that big Goodyear tire helped take the blow on the guardrail there. Of course, you see the engine sitting up top of the fuel tank, but it's bouncing on those big Goodyear tires with the inner liners in them, and they can take quite a blow.
Well, Mike Dunn actually encountered about 3 fires here. The engine upside down in the car, and suddenly, with the steel fuel lines, The engine exiting levers the car over and over and over.
Boy, that's one of the worst ones I've ever seen, and perhaps the worst one in the sport.
And here's why they make the drivers pad the roll cages in this car. Watch his helmet taking blow after blow as it settles down. Mike Dunn right now has no idea where he is, but the good news, the almost impossible news, he was A-OK, checked out at the hospital and back at the track.
I just got a sprained left index finger and my knee's a little sore, but other than that, I'm fine.
You had no warning at all?
No, the car was running real well. We had changed, actually we changed the piston. We went tire compression. We were just trying things, and it left real lazy, and then at half track it really started to make a charge, so I thought I'd run her down there and see what it'd run. And I laid down just for an instant and then blew up. I didn't really have time to react, and immediately put oil on my visor, and I couldn't see, and I just reacted to the way the car went.
You appeared to be trying to drive it until it rolled.
Well, actually, what had happened is I was worried about getting into Al Segrini's lane, the person we were racing, and that was my main concern at first. And so, being that I couldn't see, I was just reacting. I was actually probably overcorrecting for the way the car moved, just so that I didn't want to get into his lane. And evidently, what happened is the motor went over on top of the fuel tank and then went off the side of the tire, and that's what rolled me. I thought I'd went off the side of the track and hit something. That's what rolled me, because it wasn't really that far out of control at that time.
And on the first roll, the roll bar hit as hard as it possibly could have.
Oh yeah, it definitely hit hard. Luckily, nobody home up there, so it didn't hurt me up there any.
It says an awful lot to the men that make the rules.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm living proof of how safe these things are.
Well, there's no reward for heroics in this sport. If there were, Mike Dunn would get the Emmy in this edition of Decade of Thrills. 4 months before Orange County, this was Columbus, Ohio, the Spring Nationals. The throttle stuck wide open. The engine explodes on fire. The right rear slick blows, taking a huge chunk of the body. Mike Dunn right now is on one of the shortest racetracks in drag racing. He knows there's a double catch net at the end of the racetrack. He just hopes he can steer the car into it. No brakes, on fire, no parachute. Mike Dunn in big trouble. The first net strips the body off the car, gets the fire away from him. The second net collects that race car, estimated to be going a speed of about 150 miles an hour. The net slams back with Mike tightly strapped in the car.
Boy, that was a bad one, Steve. I was feared for Mike again. That could have been a real serious one.
Well, Mike Dunn scrambling around for his belts. He's got him. The 5-point harness is unbuckled, and miraculously, this young man from Southern California is out of the car. An eerie scene, almost like man's first walk on the moon. I was down there. I talked to Mike Dunn. He was okay.
Mike Dunn, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's one of the worst accidents I've ever seen at this end of the racetrack.
Wasn't that bad.
He looked it from here. I think when you see the tape, you'll believe me. The net definitely prevented what could have been an awful bad situation for you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Throttle hung wide open, and I reached for the fuel shot and then blew up and backfired and everything else. So
everything went wrong that could go wrong, really.
Yeah. I was pulling as hard as I could to get that throttle back, and something got hung up somewhere.
We'll let you get up to your crew. They're concerned as we are.
Mike Dunn, so brave, so modest, in so many ways so typical of the very special breed of men and women that make up NHRA Championship drag racing.
I think so.
What do you think, Ryan?
Who's going to win, Snake or Chi-Town?
Chi-Town.
You all right? All right.
You told me to do it, they did it for you.
It was indeed a decade of thrills, the past 10 years of NHRA Championship drag racing. It had just about everything you could want. Drama, excitement, explosive action, unheard of performance. The veterans like Don Prudhomme are still out there doing what they do best, winning drag races. But there's some young lions that are starting to nip at their heels. Which brings me to my final question for you. How much longer are you going to drag race?
I still enjoy it, Steve. That's the key. And it's still exciting to me. I think you're going to see the snake out there for quite a while to come.
And I'm going to be out there just as long as you at the end of that racetrack for Diamond P.
It's been fun.
Thank you a lot. For my friend Don Prudhomme, this is Steve Evans.
Hello, I'm Steve Evans. With the world's largest library of motorsports events and specials, Diamond P Video is your source for great racing action to be enjoyed at home on video cassette. From award-winning coverage of a wide variety of motorsports to a growing collection of made-for-home videos, we've got the programs you want to see. Our National Hot Rod Association collection includes classic national events dating back to 1976. And for 1986, 12 of NHRA's major events will be available on video cassette, including the Big Go West, the Winter Nationals, the first major East Coast drag race of the year, the famed Gator Nationals, the Spring Nationals from Columbus, Ohio, and of course, the oldest, most prestigious drag race in the world, the U.S. Nationals. If it's motorsports variety you crave, look no further than our American Sports Cavalcade series, now available as a feast of great racing events, ranging from super speedway NASCAR action to bump and run dirt track thrills with a world of outlaw sprint cars. There's tractor pulls, truck racing, modified sprint car action, even wet and woolly swamp buggy competition. For those who enjoy the excitement of sports car racing, our International Motorsports Association series features some of the finest racing action of the sleek, super quick GTP, GTO, and GTU cars of IMSA, competing on some of this country's most beautiful and toughest road courses. And along with our outstanding event coverage, we have a growing library of made-for-home videos sure to provide viewing pleasure time and time again. Included is the ground-pounding thrills and spills of the classic Decade of Thrills, 90 minutes of NHRA's greatest hits spanning 1970 through 1983, hosted by legendary Don the Snake Prudhomme and me, Steve Evans. For nonstop action, there's nothing like Decade of Thrills. Big Daddy Don Garlits is a legend in drag racing. And Garlits, the video biography, takes you on a 70-minute trip through Big Daddy's life, highlighted by rare film footage of Garlits' early racing days and a tour of his Museum of Drag Racing in Ocala, Florida. From his street racing days through his triumphant return to NHRA competition at the 1984 U.S. Nationals, there has never been a champion like Don Garlits. It's easy to forget when looking at NHRA drag racing in the 80s that there was a time when there was no such thing as drag racing. Gathering Speed, the early years of drag racing, traces the birth, growth, and development of the fastest accelerating sport on wheels. This 110-minute special traces the sport from its early start on California's dry lakes through the boom years of the 60s that saw the spreading of national events across the country. Without a doubt, the most complete, most comprehensive look at the origins of drag racing. And, available in April 1986, the newest, most explosive special yet, Fabulous Floppers. An in-depth look at the world of funny cars, starting as an experimental class in the early 60s, supported by the major auto manufacturers. Funny cars have grown and evolved into the most exciting machines to rip down a quarter-mile strip. We're Diamond P Video, the leader in automotive video, and your source for all your motorsports viewing. For more information on these and many more programs, call us today.